Manufacturing is at the heart of the government's Big Four agenda. At the celebration of 60 years of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, we sat down with the chairman Sachen Gudka to talk about the progress made in the manufacturing sector and the vast opportunities this sector holds for the economy.
We're in a fairly complex environment whereby although manufacturing's share of GDP is falling, in volume terms it's actually growing year on year. So last year manufacturing grew almost 4.5%, which was amongst the highest in many years. However, its share of GDP was 8.3% in 2017. It fell to 7.7% in 2018. And the reason is other sectors are growing faster than manufacturing. So for example, agriculture is growing because there was no drought last year. So we had good rains and agriculture was quite good. But other sectors such as telecoms and banks or finance are growing faster than manufacturing. So is the 15% share of GDP achievable? It'll take business unusual to achieve it, because we need to grow at a compounded rate of almost 36% year on year to get to 15% of GDP. So how are we going to get from manufacturing growth of 4.5% to 36%? You can only do that if we fix competitiveness. And competitiveness arises from basically three broad categories. The first one is what we call inbound competitiveness. The second one is what we call our process competitiveness. And the third one is what we call our outbound competitiveness. And at the moment, Kenya is disadvantaged by close to 13% against our peer nations. We really need to tackle some of the hard areas within that competitiveness, be it power costs or ITF fees, labor productivity, the whole late payment cycle and movement of goods across counties, which causes friction within the cost. So we really need to drill down and identify each bucket and address it conclusively to start getting our competitiveness back. Yeah. The effect of this was that all inputs for manufacturers the IDF fee would drop from 2% to 1.5%. However, the fee for importing finished goods would increase from 2% to 3.5%. So there would be a differential between making goods locally and importing. The second thing is the railway development levy has remained at 1.5% for manufacturers, but will increase to 2% for finished goods. So if you look at it overall, the combined effect of the changes is to actually make finished goods 2.5% more expensive than local. Yes, I think the government embarked on a journey on addressing the ease of doing business, which was, I think at one time we were ranked about 131 in the index. We've been climbing up the ladder. We were at rank number 61 last year, which was a pretty good feat. I think the target is to get to below 50 this year, but that's all in competition with what other countries are doing. So other countries are not standing still, and we need to make sure that we keep on addressing the ease of doing business. However, if we don't address the cost of doing business, investment follows, or the investment dollars follow the cost of doing business. The ease of doing business is nice to have, but the cost of doing business is a need to have. And therefore, it's imperative that we have that we address the competitiveness issues conclusively on this. I think there's a lot of inputs and factors, and actually we've received pretty strong support from government, especially this year, because we've looked at creating what we call a predictable and a stable environment. In Ethiopia right now, although investor optimism is there, it's not a predictable environment and it's not a stable environment, as we've seen with the recent events at the weekend. We wish Ethiopia the best. It's a market Kenya cannot afford to ignore because it has 105 million people. But at the same time, it's also trying to compete with Kenya in terms of attracting investment dollars. Egypt was basically, after the devaluation of the Egyptian pound about 2 years ago, I think the exportability has increased significantly. So together with the changes, the political risks in Egypt have declined, the climate is better, the power costs are better, and the population is also pretty significant, so it will always attract a lot of investment anyway. The issue is how can we bridge that, what we call that 13% gap between ourselves and some of our peer competitors like Egypt and so on. And we need to nail down, for example, our port and logistics costs. And again, there's a lot of action being taken by government to try and fix individual pain points at the moment. So we are grateful for that. Until Ethiopia addresses the chronic forex shortages, you'll see very reduced appetite for investment in Ethiopia. Because if business is set up there and they're unable to procure foreign exchange to get their raw materials, that's a fundamental issue. In Kenya, we have no such problems. We have a liquid economy, we have a freely traded foreign exchange market and so on. So we've never really had an issue. Yeah. Well, I'm happy that Kenya was the first nation to sign up to the African Continental Free Trade Area. Kenya has also signed up to the Tripartite Free Trade Area, which is a combination of COMESA, EAC, and SADC. And within the TFTA right now, almost 90% of tariff lines have now been agreed between all the nations. So that's a pretty good start. So already quite a lot of tariff discussions have taken place, the negotiations and so on. About 10% or less will remain on what we call the sensitive list and decline over a period. But a lot of the work that's gone in to make TFTA can be used as the building blocks to do African Continental Free Trade Area as well. Number one, competitiveness. If we're not competitive, we die. Number two is a predictable and a stable environment. So no rash policy decisions or any surprises. Investors hate surprises. And they will always look for predictability in any economy before they decide to put in their investment dollars. The third area is really we need to fix corruption once and for all, because corruption deprives government of development revenue, it deprives private sector or increases the cost of doing business within the private sector, and we need to have what we call a wake-up call or a clarion call for the nation to say we're at a crisis point and we really need to fix corruption once and for all. Because if we get those three things right, we're poised for takeoff, similar to what the Asian tigers did. I would say Kenyan companies have always been pretty early adopters of good technology in their operations. Yes, there are some industries which haven't modernized with the times, but I would say the bulk of manufacturers probably have fairly state-of-the-art equipment in terms of what they do. I'll just give an example on a printing industry where we are a participant. I would say we have machines equivalent to what a lot of countries in the West have. And we produce quality that is good enough to be on a par, if not better than what's produced in the West. So I would say the technological revolution is coming, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, sensors within machines which say we can do preventive maintenance at an earlier date and have less downtime and so on. So we need to ensure we embrace the technology and at the same time retrain our people such that they know how to use the technology and what they need to do. And that should also be part of the TVET program for interns and things as well. I think it's a positive step because I think in fact, Kenya Association of Manufacturers is launching the SME hub within KAM on the 4th of July in the morning. And within the SME hub, we've clustered it into what we call incubators, accelerators, and scale. So the Capital Markets Authority provides an opportunity for companies who are growing at substantial scale throughout and then start becoming larger and larger enterprises it enables the owners to have a viable option in terms of a listing on the stock exchange and so on. And that frees up liquidity or crystallizes liquidity for the owners as well. So I think it's positive.